Hi, welcome to Chad's Silversmithing. I've been feeling like doing a bracelet lately. So I have this really cool onyx stone that has some stripes in it, and so the bracelet's going to have the central stone, and it's going to be a cuff bracelet with a square wire outer edge, and I'm going to do kind of a flowy wing design coming out from the center point and mount the stone above it. So I think it should be kind of a cool piece. We'll see, I guess. So let's get started. This is one of my sketchbooks you can get on my merch store. They almost all of them have some useful metalsmithing information on the backside. This one has flow temperatures of different kinds of solder. There's some with conversion charts for gauges to inches to millimeters and things like that. So what I really like about them though is the dot matrix in the background helps me to draw better pictures. I'm not super good at drawing pictures, so. But it's nice to be able to keep track of your projects in the long run. I've filled up about 4 of these so far, and I'm really glad that I have a record of things so that I can go back and redo pieces if I want to without having to reinvent the wheel each time. So maybe get yourself 1 or 2 of these. I think they're pretty handy. Okay, so here's what I had in mind. Here's the stone. This is, like I said, kind of sort of a rounded rectangle or sort of a cushion sort of shape. It's onyx, and it's got some real nice translucence to it on one part here, so I think I'm going to set it open backed so that you get a little bit of light play through there. And to do that, we're going to use 3/16 inch fine silver bezel strip in 26 gauge, which equates to 4.76 millimeters by 0.41 millimeters, if I remember correctly. I'm going to use 14 gauge wire for the bulk of the overall piece, including the designs in here. 14 gauge square wire, I should say. You could use 12 gauge for the outer part. If I had some 12 gauge left, I'm out of it right now. I probably would have, but I think it'll look pretty either way, so we'll see. For the step on the inside of the bezel I'm going to make for this, I'm going to use, just because I have some laying around, some 16 gauge round wire. Thick enough to create a nice little platform, but not so thick that it covers up a lot of the light coming through the back. Probably would normally use square wire, but I'm trying to save my 14 gauge square, and I don't have any scraps of 16 big enough. I probably would have used 16. But let's go ahead and make a bezel for this. And then I'm going to use my miter vise jig. If you haven't seen those before, those are super handy. This is an optional item to do this project. It makes it easier to do 45-degree angles, so I'm going to use it for that. So we can get a nice rectangle for the outer part. Let's make a bezel for this guy, and then we'll move on to the next step. It's been a busy week, so if I'm a little low energy today, I apologize. I'm kind of worn out. I'll try to perk it up for you. Although, to be fair, perky is not my natural state. Okay, when I'm measuring for a bezel, if you're new to this, I usually overlap them, and then I'm going to add a little bit beyond where they meet just so I have a skosh to file on, so I can get it pretty close to exact. And we'll cut it off right there. So try not to stab yourself in the finger like I just did when I was marking it. The stabbing is optional. Make sure and get these ends nice and flat. I suspect this is going to be a sort of a upper level beginner, lower level intermediate kind of range for this project. It's going to help if you have a hotter torch, because we're going to have quite a bit of mass that's pretty spread out, and so it's going to lose heat pretty readily. And if you're just using a little portable butane or a propane torch even, you're probably going to struggle to get it hot enough to get it to solder well. So before I had an acetylene torch, I used to put 2 propane plumber's torches, 1 in each hand, to get them hot enough to do cuff bracelets. And that's fine, except then you don't have a free hand. So if you need to use a tool or something. So that's where having a prehensile tail would be super handy. Or just get a hotter torch. If you're new to my channel and you don't know my setup, here's a little bit of information about my torch and my solder and flux and things. One thing, a little tip I can give you, if you're doing a bigger bezel, bezel's relatively flimsy when it's getting ready to be soldered and you have these two ends pushing together. To keep them pushing together nicely even when the heat relaxes the metal, if you put a little divot in the bottom, it makes the whole overall thing a little bit springier, and it makes it a little bit easier to get a good solder joint. Cool this guy off and shape him a little bit. One of my silversmithing friends always says, brown stones don't sell very well. But I like some brown stones. This one's kind of pretty. So, I guess I care less if it sells and more if I like the outcome. But somebody will eventually like it. You know, we have to sit on it for a while. I don't know if that's true or not, though. I mean, I like brightly colored stones as well, but so let me get this 16 gauge round here. I'm going to file the end flat. I'm just kind of fine-tuning it as I go here. Try to get it as close to the shape as I can. So we get a nice tight fit in there. That's pretty good, actually. If you want to get a really precise line, sometimes if you use a little bit of marker and then kind of make a finer mark by scratching a mark through it, it's easier to get pretty close to where you want it to be exactly. I think sometimes I'll do this without soldering these closed, but I think on this one I want to solder it closed so I can get it nice and flat and just right at the bottom. This is called pick soldering. It allows you to pick up a bit of solder, heat the piece up to the flow temperature, and then if you got it just at the right point, when you touch it there, it should just jump on like that. If you're interested in seeing a video on how to do that, I have a pretty good one right there. It's probably the key skill that made me the silversmith I am today. Whatever that is. Oh, you should probably cut that one out, Chad. That was pretty cheesy. Okay, the best way I've ever found to solder these kind of things in is to make a little outline of solder that's going to fit right underneath this edge here. Set it right on top of it after it's all fluxed and everything, and just heat from the outside, and it should just draw it right up in there. One thing you need to be a little careful of is we're using sterling silver wire and fine silver bezel strip, and sterling wire melts at a slightly lower temperature than fine silver, and so if you get this thing too hot, that sterling wire can start to melt to the inside of your bezel, which generally means you'll have to start over. So try not to get it so hot that you start melting your little step that you're creating in there, because it'll just kind of spread out on the inside of the bezel, which is less than ideal. Just going to do a little cleanup filing, make this look neat on the bottom. Okay, so now we have our bezel. So now we're looking here. Looks pretty good. So we'll set him to the side for the moment. And we need to do a little bit of measuring and filing. And I pre-cut these two pieces of 14 gauge. I haven't straightened them out perfectly, but I'm going to need to do a 45-degree angle on each of these sides. So I'm going to get them as straight as I can, and then it'll be easier to get these exactly the same length, so we have a nice rectangular rectangle, because these are going to be the two long sides of the outside edge. Pretty close. Pretty close to what I drew too. So let's use that miter vise jig. These have two different slots. They make ones with three as well. This one has 45-degree angle slot and then a 90-degree angle slot. They also have the 30 degrees or 60 or whatever it is. So for the sake of time, you can see right here, got a nice 45-degree angle there and 45-degree angle there. So I'll do the same thing to this one. And then I'm going to cut two pieces like this, but I'm not going to make you watch me do the same thing over and over again, because I'm just going to do what I just did there. So I'll be right back. Alright, I'm going to cut a little bit smaller pieces of solder for these here. And I'm going to do this end first, and then we'll add the second one. So, one of the things that beginners struggle with generally is it doesn't seem to make sense as a beginner that since we're going to solder way down here, that you have to heat the entire piece. But with silver, it bleeds off heat so quickly that if we're heating just down here, it's going to overheat this side, and this is going to prevent the solder from really flowing and sticking to this piece. So it's kind of key to understanding how to do this well is to make that connection in your brain. Like, there's a lot of mass in this long piece here. If I want it to stick to that little piece there, they both have to reach the 1450 degrees or so that it takes to get hard silver sheet solder to flow. So, but this one being much bigger takes longer to get up to that temperature than the little piece over here. So. See, and I still didn't have it hot enough there. By the way, if you're one of my regular viewers, my channel's growth has slowed way down, and it may be that I'm not doing very creative stuff, but I don't think that's necessarily what's going on. I think YouTube messed with the algorithm. So if you have friends that you can share my channel with, I would really appreciate it. It seems like YouTube periodically does something that negatively affects your channel in order for them to get a bigger cut of things or whatever. So anything you can do to help will be appreciated. Especially with silver being so expensive right now. It looks pretty rectangular. This particular one ended up being about, let's see if I can find it. You know, about 18 millimeters wide overall. Alright, so let's find the center of this thing. Yeah, that's pretty close. Okay, so what we have to do next is make these little wing things, and if you notice, I drew them so they're narrower in parts and wider in other parts a little bit. So I might hammer these a little bit, but first let's cut these two big ones, I think. And so find that working close. Square wire has a tendency to twist because it's trying to find an easier way to bend when you bend it against. It's trying to stretch this outer edge and compress the inner edge, and that's quite a bit of mechanical changes taking place in the metal there. So periodically you need to stop and realign it because it's going to try and turn diagonally. Oops. I'm going to flatten that end just a skosh. And maybe widen it just a little bit right here too. What do you think? Hopefully I was in frame there. That's okay. Okay, I'm going to try and make another one of these out of this one. But in the meantime, let me make another shorter one here. I want this one. This one just kind of comes underneath the other one from here to about here, so we don't need a huge piece. And this one's going to have to go right here. I'm going to have to flatten these ones on the ends a little bit too. See, I think overlapping these like this will give it some three-dimensionality, which I like. So I'm going to go ahead and make all the rest of these. I have these two on this side and then two more on each side that are shorter. So I'll be right back. So I think I have those four done. And I have these relatively shaped how I want them to be, but they're not meeting exactly the same way at the end. And I need to have a similar amount of space up above these in order to put these in. So it seems to me like soldering it here and here will allow me the control to be able to manipulate these into exactly the shape that I want, filing or cutting or whatever. And then we can add those next ones on, and then I'll come back and do the other four. So let's try that and see how that goes. So I think I'm going to solder those last solder joints here and here. I think that's kind of how I want that to fit in there. So let's solder one of those in, and then I'll try and get the other one to match it pretty well. That looks good. I'm going to make those other two components and then add those on, and then we'll mount the bezel. I'll be back in a few. I'm going to do a little bit of drumming to get this smoothed out in order for these to fit better, and then I'll be right back. Okay, I've got one fit in here, got another one made, but I'll need to do some fine tuning on it in order to get it to fit and match this one pretty well. A little creative bending and filing. Get it up here so it's above this one, goes underneath it, and then goes up on that one right there. So hopefully we can get that soldered in. Then we'll try and match it with the other one. My original thought was to do an actual realistic bird wing, and maybe with even the body of the bird in the middle. So mounting this right about here, see how the lines continue down the flowiness of it? I kind of like that. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to shape this a little bit. Let's use my water bottle. It's going to be a little harder to bend in certain parts because of the varying thickness. Kind of about like that. Let's use, let's see if I got any medium solder left. Okay, I think we're connected now. So I'm going to go ahead and clean that up a little bit and pickle it, and then we'll come back and set the stone after it's polished. So. Okay, so here it is polished up, but it doesn't have the stone in it yet. So I'm going to go ahead and pop this in and make sure I get it in the right way. I think that's the way it goes. I do this a little differently than some. I use my chain nose pliers to set stones. And I use this part of it right here, this big smooth flat part, as a bezel pusher. So we'll start off doing that. Alright. Finally, I use the smooth outer part here as a burnishing tool. So we'll just kind of rub that top edge with a little bit of force. Somebody who I know who's a beginner was just talking about their struggle with bezels, and I get that because there's a lot of way to mess up bezels at first, and a lot of my early bezels look pretty rough, especially on the sides here. It was hard to get them nice and neat, so don't get too discouraged if you struggle with that at first a little bit. It gets better over time. So that's what I had in mind there. I like the swirliness of stuff like that, so I think that came out pretty good. I'd take an A- on that one. Tell me what you think. Tell me what you might have done differently. I always love to hear your techniques as well. So if you have ideas for videos, whatever, leave a comment. I'd love to hear from you. So, all right. Okay, well that was the wing-inspired kind of cuff bracelet with a pretty stone. I hope you enjoyed that one. If you did, I'd love it if you'd hit the like button before you go. That really helps to get my channel promoted, and I would really appreciate that. I also think it would be great if you go visit my main channel page on YouTube. I have 630 plus videos now, much to my own amazement. But there's a lot of content there, a whole bunch of different projects you can try out, different skill levels. It's got a lot of stuff for you there, so check it out. I'd love it if you'd subscribe to my channel. There's no cost to doing that, and it makes it easier to find my content, so make sure to do that before you go. I also wanted to thank some groups of people. My patrons over on Patreon are my core group of supporters. I really do appreciate their support, not just the financial part, but what a wonderful community they've put together over there. I really like interacting with them and picking their brains and sharing ideas with each other. It's a nice community, and I appreciate them being such cool people, so thanks for that. The other group are my YouTube subscribers, and we just passed 28,200. I think we're almost at 300, so it might be 28,300 by the time this video posts. That's amazing. Thank you for that. Never in my wildest dreams did I ever expect to have that many people following my YouTube channel. So thank you for that. That's pretty cool. I love the comments that you all leave. It's nice to hear your stories and how you do things, and suggestions for videos. And just the general interacting. I appreciate that, and I try to answer all my comments. So feel free to leave a comment if you want. But thank you for that support. Thank you for your financial help as well. The Buy Me a Coffees, the super thanks, merch purchases, buying my ebooks. All of that stuff makes my channel sustainable, so thanks for that. Make sure to visit the description down below for some links. There's a link to my Patreon, my merch store, a link to where you can buy my ebooks. The newest one is 2025's. You can even get a package deal and get 3 different ones, 2023, 2024, and 2025. For a package deal, you get $15 off of the total, and that's a pretty good deal. So provides you lots of projects if you get that, but check it out either way. So, all right, well, thanks for watching today. Take care. Happy silversmithing.